All right. Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Dirce Hernandez. I've been a cybersecurity practitioner for 18 years. Got my start in Austin, state government, higher education, healthcare, financial services, Fortune 6 companies, Fortune 10 companies, you name it. Cybersecurity is going to be the same. It's just what changes is the dynamics, the regulatory scrutiny, the teams, and obviously the amount of money that's infused into the programs. Right now, obviously, the hot ticket item is AI, right? So I kind of wanted to have a conversation about how us as cybersecurity practitioners are dealing with AI and handling AI in a way that can actually be, you know, have a good story to the leadership teams internally to show value, to show that, it's definitely going to be useful for the teams to kind of engage in handling day-to-day operations from a red team offensive security perspective, blue team defensive security perspective. So my talk is about the controls and some of the governance actions that can, help teams currently right now with, actual things they can actually do current state in their environments, based on around the different things happening with the, OWASP AI exchange. You're familiar with the OWASP top 10 kind of, the AI space has something very similar to that. You're familiar with the 853 control families on NIST, if they follow the NIST CSF 2.0 framework. And then obviously NIST has its own AI RMF 2024 version that just came up last year as well. So let's get into it, right? So first one out of the gate, prompt injection. So similar to the OWASP application security top 10, that's probably one of the big ones, right? So from an AI perspective, malicious inputs manipulate the model, right? The models that are happening that are currently in your environment or looking into coming into your environment. From a governance perspective, having those guardrails, having that human oversight, human in the loop is going to be, a control that's in place. 70% of reduction give and take is unwanted outputs. So if you look at the document, it kind of shows the control mapping tables from the OWASP AI control family, right? So I'm not going to read them. I'll let you kind of look through them. But it has basically the parallel versions of what OWASP shows from an AI control perspective, what NIST has on the Rep 5, Revision 5 control family, and then the NIST AI RMF subcategory function, if you're familiar with the AI framework that they have happening, right? So think the NIST CSF as an example. It's a good kind of parallel to showcase where it's at in the staging area of the categories and functions, right? From a delivery perspective, actionable deliverables, right? Emphasize prompt layer defensing, input sanitization, model monitoring. So some of the things you can do now, current state, implement prompt sanitization filters, regis based, right? Before model input ingestion. Have those things in place before you deploy your models. Develop a prompt risk register for tracking high-risk prompt context. If you have an existing risk register, just add a new vector, a new sector that talks about AI risk, and have those documented and have those identified. That's a risk register. If you're not familiar with the risk register, Google it. There's many different, spreadsheets that you can, just start off foundationally. Many teams are using, a system like a ServiceNow GRC and Archer GRC metric stream that have a risk register embedded within it. So use that, right, to identify those risks and basically populate the environment. Configure access control lists, ACLs, restricting who can deploy or modify your prompts, right? It's very important from a IAM perspective, who has access, who should not have access to your models and to the model enablement. Conduct quarterly AI red team project and testing using the OWASP Pirate or prompt fuzzer, right? I'm going to go into details of what those are here in a minute. Review and update prompt injection detection playbooks quarterly. So build your playbooks, update your playbooks. That's essential, right? From a red team perspective, from a operator perspective, you have to have that documented, not only for operational day-to-day, lessons learned after action reviews, but also from an audit perspective, have those handy at all times. And enforce human approval workflows for sensitive AI connectors and APIs, right? So have those human in the loop checks and balances to make sure you're doing everything right, by policies, standards, what have you, right, within the organization. Going back to the Pirate, right? So that's a Python risk identification toolkit. It's a framework developed by Microsoft's AI Red Team for automated red teaming exercises and security assessments of generative AI systems. It helps security professionals identify and mitigate risk in large language models or LLMs, right? So that's one of them. The other one's called prompt fuzzer, right? Different applications, software tools that apply fuzzing techniques to large language model applications to test and improve their security, robustness, and safety. It works by generating and injecting a wide variety of custom dynamic prompts designed to uncover vulnerabilities such as prompt injection, jailbreaking, data leakage, allowing developers to identify and fix weaknesses before malicious actors exploit them. So this is not any different than shifting left, guys. This is not any different from application security, shifting left and, enabling security at the feasibility stage into your CI/CD pipelines, integration, testing. Now you just have the AI spin on it. And this is basically what it's trying to let you know and tell you, right? From a data and modeling poisoning perspective, right, the threat for that is corrupted and malicious training data in your models. From a governance perspective, you want to validate that supplier provenance, model lineage, outcomes, stronger integrity, and better assurances in your models from to deal with data and model poisoning attacks. You'll see those control mappings from OWASP, from the NIST control family, and the NIST AI RMF. And like I said, Jeremy, I'm going to be sharing this document to whoever wants to see it. Look at it. And have some takeaway action items to share with their teams. I mean, I have no problem sharing this document out, right? So actionable deliverables, discuss supply chain verification, vendor diligence to protect against data poisoning. So we see this a lot in the third party space, right? End party, fourth party. There's a lot of issues with, how other organizations that are serving the organizations are handling AI, using AI, right? So now we have to start asking even more questions. If we already have, if we didn't have enough questionnaires, we need more questionnaires, right? Require suppliers to provide cryptographic hashes of training data sets, maintain a data lineage register linking all data sets to provenance metadata, enable continuous data set integrity scanning using hash comparisons and anomaly detections, establish supplier attestation forms referencing ISO 2790 as an example, the AI RMF clause, right? If you're going all in on the NIST AI RMF, implement sandbox validation for external data before integrating. So, think like UAT, dev, think your staging environments before going in prod. Log and audit all data ingestion events within the machine ML, machine learning pipelines. So that's all these things you can do now, right? If you're having models in the environment, if you're worried about third-party potential implications of them, dealing with potential AI issues, these are the sorts of things that you want to do from an actual deliverable perspective when it comes to that model poisoning perspective and attacks. Sensitive data, right? From a threat perspective, the model reveals confidential or personal data. That's huge, right? So from a governance perspective, more and more organizations are going all in on data privacy impact assessments or DPIAs, enforced deletion and retention. I mean, Texas just got their privacy law enacted and enabled and amended here in the last couple of years, a year and a half now. Right now, they have governance controls around AI governance that just came into fruition here in this fiscal year that started. So more organizations are doing that. That's affecting more on the federal side here locally. I mean, here statewide in Texas, but it won't be long till it just permeates down to the private sector. From an outcome perspective, you want to have fewer privacy incidents. Going back to the control families, these are the applicable controls that are going to be impacting this sort of sensitive data disclosures, right? So, data minimization, obfuscation of data, it makes sense, right? I mean, this not should be surprising for anyone to look at the privacy safeguards, the evaluation of data elements when it comes to control standards. And then your PIA, right? Privacy impact assessments. If you're not familiar with those, get familiar with those. People are going all in and conducting not only maturity assessments, cyber maturity assessments, but also privacy assessments as well. That includes AI assessments as well to come in behind that, right? So what can you do now? Reinforce privacy by design, and secure output handling, right? So create and maintain a model privacy impact assessment, or MPIA, right? For all Gen AI deployments in your environment. Deploy automated output scrubbing for PII and sensitive entities. You can use those tools to help you, right? So there's many tools out there that can help identify from a data classification, from a data security posture management perspective. There's many tools that can help you with these sorts of things to help scrub out the PII and sensitive data, restricted data, confidential data elements in your environment. Enforce strict data retention policies via data lifecycle management scripts. So that's huge, right? You want to make sure you have robust data retention policies enabled, live, operating in your environment. You want to conduct semi-annual privacy and AI compliance reviews, like anything, right? I mean, aside from training, you want to do those reviews to kind of go hand in hand with the training, kind of like Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Well, guess what? We have an AI compliance review happening at the same time to kind of just steer people in the right direction and to do things the right way. Require encryption of all AI training and inference data at rest and in transit. So in the wire, in transmission, at rest, in your data stores, in your your containers, your Kubernetes clusters, Docker containers, whatever you have your data elements, encrypt them, right? Integrate privacy alert triggers for anomalous data and exposure in your SIM. We're using Splunk, QRadar, whatever you're using as a SIM, making sure you have those alerts for anomalous data exposures kind of flagged and going to help you with visibility. From a model theft and IP, intellectual property leakage perspective, right? So that's the threat of unauthorized model replication of your models. From a governance perspective, you want to extend that intellectual property protection to all your artifacts. From an outcome perspective, it's basically detecting the API scraping, making sure API scraping does not happen, right? So these are your control families, right? Model obfuscation, access control, safeguards for confidentiality, asset protection, right? It all goes back to the assets, right? Having that full line of sight into your models and everything that's particularly happening within the models, right? From a delivery perspective, highlight the importance of intellectual property protection and model encryption. So enforce your API rate limits and anomaly-based access controls on all your endpoints that are using the AI. Implement encryption like we talked about, obfuscation for model weights and configuration files. Create an AI model asset register. So very different than the risk register. You're creating an actual AI model asset register to live side by side with the risk register to show classification, to show ownership, to show who's accountable from accountability. So think like a RACI on steroids when it comes to your AI, right? So if you're familiar with the RACI, who's accountable, who should be informed, who's controlling this information, right? Deploying that model, integrate monitoring and hash validation at runtime. So integrity monitoring is going to be massive and very important. Implement legal intellectual property protection clauses and third-party usage contracts. So just think about legal. Legal has to be in the mix. Like anything, you cannot disclose any sort of breach, any sort of incident without legal's buy-in and legal's approval, right? If you do that, you're going to be in a world of hurt. If you don't do that, I'm sorry. Run your pen tests, targeting model extraction vectors semi-annually. I mean, if you can do them quarterly, more power to you, but many people don't have the resources to do all these pen tests quarterly, especially for those deployments that are happening for your AI enablement. From an adversarial and evasion attack perspective, right? So the threat to that is, inputs crafted to mislead predictions in your model. From a governance perspective, teaming up with the AI team, the red teaming teams via OWASP tools, giving them the tools to help deal with those adversarial innovation attacks, right? And what's this going to help? That's going to help come out with better metrics, better KRIs, better KPIs, better governance controls around what they're doing from a red teaming perspective. So once again, right, the adversarial robustness toolbox, ART, right? ART is a Python library developed by IBM that provides the tools to test the robustness of machine learning models against adversarial attacks. Adversarial attacks are inputs designed to intentionally confuse or mislead a machine learning model. So that's the technology that's available. If you notice, one of the things that we're talking about, Python, right? So if you don't know Python, you might want to start looking at building your game up in Python and Python programming, Python enablement. These are your control families that are associated with that: adversarial robustness, adaptive defense, pen testing, vulnerability monitoring, system monitoring. All that is part of the game, right? When it comes to adversarial robustness in regards to your AI models, right? From an execution perspective, encourage continuous adversarial testing, continuous pen testing, continuous resilience measurements from a GRC perspective, right? So schedule quarterly adversarial testing using your OWASP, ART, and Fullbox frameworks. We're going to get into what Fullbox is. Document adversarial scenarios in a red team readiness plans or after action reviews, lessons learned, playbooks, your SOAR platforms, if you can build those out. Deploy anomaly detection for adversarial input detection. Conduct your annual adversarial robustness audits. Before audit comes in, be ready for the audits, the audit team to ask those questions, right? Develop model resilience metrics for reporting to leadership. Integrate adversarial examples into continuous training data sets. Fullbox is a Python library, once again, Python, right, for creating adversarial examples to evaluate the robustness of machine learning models, particularly deep neural networks. Adversarial examples are inputs with small, often imperceptible perturbations that cause the model to make incorrect predictions. So just think garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, that's supposed to help with these sorts of things to help reduce hallucinations, reduce error rate in the model that you're handling and working through in your environment. The framework provides a standardized and unified API for applying a wide range of adversarial attacks to models built with various popular deep learning frameworks. Its modern iteration, Fullbox Native, uses EagerPy library to deliver high performance across multiple backends with a single code base. So those are, those red teamers that understand programming, that can input that frameworks into the environment. They're going to be in a good position to help them reduce these sorts of risk in regards to the particular adversarial and testing perspective. From a runtime modeling poisoning perspective, right, the threat is manipulation of your deployed logic in the model, right? From a governance perspective, having the adaptation, having those checkpoints to implement. And then what's going to come outcome of that? What's going to be the where the rubber meets the road? Having that complete traceability of your lifecycle of your AI model, right? So monitoring, review, reporting, configuration, use, runtime integrity, all the controls are going to be applicable when it comes to this stuff, right? From an actioning perspective, you want to reinforce your runtime attestation and continuous validation processes. So enable digital signage, digital signing of all prediction models before deployment, automatic model integrity verification through hash-based attestation, configure your SIM alerts for any model version drift and changes, unauthorized updates to your model. Your SIM should flag those and call those out, and build those to the playbook right away. See it as a major alert and triage that. Create a rollback procedure for compromised AI artifacts. Maintain deployment logs for 90 plus days to support your audit trail. And then include model updates in your change control board. If you don't have a CCB or change control board, create one, right? Like a steering committee, a charter, right? To kind of get the agenda, show what the teams are doing, show the leadership team that you have the buy-in to do that work that needs to be done to help with AI and the AI models in the environment before going all in. From another area, right? Insecure output handling. The threat of that is the model output embeds malicious code. From a governance perspective, you want to review and sanitize the AI outputs. That means reduce content injection risk. So that's basically the big outcome out of this one for insecure output. Input validation, massive, right? From a NIST control perspective, denial of service, protection, AI implementation, validation, safety checks. If you're looking at the NIST AI RMF, all these controls are going to be dealing directly with the insecure output and how you handle that. From an actionable perspective, highlight risk of AI-generated content and the need for content filtering. So have implement output sanitization using HTML escaping and regex filters. Run automated content safety scans on all your Gen AI responses and your prompts, right? Or prompt responsing for that. Apply whitelisting rules for output rendering in your user interfaces. Test output injection scenarios monthly on a month-to-month basis. Enforce isolation for AI-generated outputs in your web apps. Any web apps that are having that touch points with those AI models, keep that going for isolation for your outputs as well. Include code injection simulation in your AI red team drills. So you want to do that practice. You want to do that scenario. You want to do that simulated attack. That's code injection for this perspective, right? So that's all the actionable things you can do to deal with the insecure output. Denial of model service, right? So not denial of service anymore. Now you have denial of model for your AI model, right? So overloaded APIs or excessive requests to your API. Define your service level agreements, your SLA for resilient targets. So keep those documented. Understand what good looks like. What's a 3-alarm fire? What's a 1-alarm fire? What's a 5-alarm fire in regards to your AI model? And then try to keep it going, right? Having that uptime, like anything, like your network, 99.9% model uptime. These are your controls, right? So think PR, disaster recovery, reconstitution, availability, insurance. So think more on the VCDR perspective from a control standpoint, right? From an actionable deliverable perspective, focus on the resilience engineering and incident preparedness. So incident response, DFIR, DIR, right? Configure API throttling policies and rate limits in your gateways. deploy your AI workloads, auto scaling in circuit breaker patterns, run quarterly stress tests under peak usage, kind of, like a failover, right? Maintain failover AI endpoints across availability zones. So, really put it to the test when you're doing these sort of testing scenarios. Monitor your API performance with defined SLOs. Include AI availability metrics in resilience dashboards. So kind of have like a single pane of glass if you can to show how they're doing, how they fared, what you realize is happening when they were actually being tested. So you can kind of showcase some sort of analysis and assessment report real time as this is happening, because whenever you're under the real gun there, that's going to be really important to kind of keep track of what's actually happening. So if you have a resilience dashboard, some sort of single pane of glass to show that, that's going to be a great help for the cybersecurity red teamers in your organization. From a supply chain compromise perspective, right, the threat of that is compromised data sets on the pre-train or pre-train models. So require SBOM AI. So if you're not familiar with SBOM, the software bill of materials, more and more federal organizations are requiring organizations to have a defined software bill of materials, transparent supplier accountability. That's basically the outcome. Making sure we have all our ducks in a row. We have full visibility into everything that the vendors and your contractors and suppliers are bringing to the fold. So supply chain management, so federated identities, right? Risk assessments of our authenticity, access, authentication, authorization control, right? Supplier dependencies, supply chain assurance, and trustworthiness, right? So what we can do for a third party is stress them, right? Test third party, stress test third-party validation, and your security bill of materials, your SBOM practices. Require SBOM AI reports from all your third-party AI vendors. So that should be a requirement. If they don't have that, request that. If they don't want to go do it, go look somewhere else, right? Kind of like a non-starter, non-negotiable. Verify digital signatures of third-party models and data sets. Maintain an AI component dependency register. So this is huge. All the AI dependencies for the third-party issuers is going to be critical, because you can have the risk assessment, you can have everything in place, but if one of the dependencies is the issue, if you don't have all those dependencies identified, you're going to have a problem, right? Conduct an annual supplier risk review, so kind of like a pen test for that particular third party. Continue to risk review them. If there's a material change, significant change in the environment, or some sort of clause change in the contract, so that's where legal gets involved as well. I mean, to make sure that they're following the contract, the statement of work, all that good stuff. Integrate supplier AI risk scoring into procurement. So procurement needs to kind of be infused now in the processes to understand what AI risk is kind of determining and actioning, how they have those relationships with those third-party vendors, end party, fourth party, what have you, right? And then require that third-party attestation of AI governance maturity. So hold their feet to the fire, right? Make sure they send some sort of attestation that they're going to be doing security control reviews, AI security control reviews, AI risk assessments, AI maturity assessments in their environment, if you really want to have that warm and fuzzy feeling when working with third parties. And unfortunately, that's kind of what we're going to. We're seeing that now already with all the, I think somebody's going to be talking about the Salesforce situation. Same thing, right? I mean, this is actually happening now. We saw it with Salesforce. We're seeing it with other vendors in the space, right? Over-reliance and hallucination. So the threat to that is blind trust in all your AI outputs. From a governance perspective, you want to add the human validation, the human in the loop, stress tests in there. And what's going to happen out of that? You're going to have safer decision-making, right? You're going to have better frameworks that have human validation and input. So explainability model, right? Having that oversight. Least model privilege, continuous monitoring, promoting accountability and explainability. All these controls are going to be identified and very similar to the different frameworks you're assessing, like I mentioned, OWASP, NIST, and the AI RMF from the NIST as well. From an actioning perspective, encourage transparency reporting and human governance in your AI operations. So this is a governance talk. It wouldn't be a governance talk if you can't talk about human governance, right, in your AI ops, right? So have the established human in the loop checkpoints for your critical AI decisions in the environment. Implement mandatory explainability dashboards. Once again, have a single pane of glass, something you can kind of make heads and tails of your AI, and have have all your APIs in one place. Have all your AI models touching those AI calls if you can, visibility into that, because that's when you get into trouble, when you don't know what's actually happening in the environment. Document decision-making rationale when overriding AI outcomes. Yeah, keep that lessons learned, keep those If you have to tune the model, tune the bias, if you see it's too far left, too far right, change it up, right? And make those determinations and document those changes. Develop an AI transparency report template for governance review. So yeah, like a steering committee is charter, reviewed once a year, once a month, what have you. Just depending on the level of importance and how the teams are actually handling the AI. This can be done, once a year or a couple times out of the year, quarterly, and that sort of thing, right? And then conduct a semi-annual model performance explainability assessment. So model explainability is huge, to deal with, the retrieval augmented generation, enablement in your AI model, just to see what's actually doing, if it's performing as intended, is it performing how the organization wanted the AI to kind of conduct itself at the onset whenever they reviewed and assessed and brought it on board. And then include, like I mentioned, bias detection results in your executive risk briefings. The C-suite is going to want to look at that, right? They want to see the biases, what's actually happening with the detection results. I mean, is it skewing too far right? Is it skewing too far left? Is it overproducing? Is it underproducing? So they're going to want to get that, those particular, C-suite letter, executive sort of reports and outcomes to show that enablement, right? And that covers it, right? And I definitely wanted to leave some time up for questions. I know it's a lot. I definitely will be willing to share the document for that, and just a sneak peek of, if you're going to be going to the Region 1 Cybersecurity Conference, I'm going to kind of be speaking to that, but think more PowerPoint, think more, graphical representation of these sorts of things in the presentation. So you got to kind of sneak peek of some of the stuff I'm going to be discussing there happening on the 30th. So feel free to come out and support. But Jeremy, if there's any questions in the room or any questions within the chat, I'll be willing to kind of talk through them.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get the chat questions just because we weren't prepared for the number of people, so we didn't bring enough moderators.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
Anyone has got any questions in the room? And a mic, if you want to ask anything. I think you dropped. Oh, you got something? Nothing. Okay. Yeah, I think you dropped a lot of knowledge here.
I think I scared them, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is what we're dealing with, right, Jeremy? And I'm sure you've seen it at, American Family. I'm sure you're having those conversations with your teams, with your security engineering teams, and how they're, embedding AI or using AI for your SOAR, your SOC, your SIM, so that sort of thing. And that's going to continue just to permeate as we move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Every single vendor has an AI component, and it needs governance and everything. Mm-hmm. I am interested in your opinions or takes on, you mentioned AppSec and, CI/CD pipelines and kind of what you can do there. I'm interested in what you've experienced or found.
Yeah. So, if you go through the document, there's a few examples where you can try to incorporate that AI enablement and AI security as soon as you can, right? So think continuous integration, continuous security checks into the development. So I'm thinking Sneak, if you're familiar with that tool, right? So kind of have Sneak is, if you plug it into your Jenkins pipeline as an example, have those AI kind of mechanisms and controls checking for AI bias detection, control, AI bias flow rules, anything that can just kind of automate itself and embed itself in the development as you're building, as you're flying the plane, right? And like you said, more and more tools are going to use AI. I know, I think Sneak is having like an AI conference of how they're embedding AI in other application security for open source scanning, container scanning, and application security code scanning as well, right? So building those particular areas within AI that our teams are actually using. For example, they have a GitHub, Copilot enablement, right, live and going in the environment, making sure the pipeline is checking for these things from a security perspective to identify and particular, call out from a security risk assessment perspective, and show the teams that, there's something going on here that they need to kind of have eyes on, right? And I think it's just going to continue just to kind of, like I mentioned, permeate, look interesting in that perspective. So, the farther right you go, the lesser it is. The harder it's going to be for the teams to understand what's actually out there, right? So you need to kind of have full line of sight. And the sooner you can come in at the left, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's kind of a rehash of back in the day, getting SAST and dependency scanning, and now you got to scan your AI.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you, Dirce, for your. Oh, you have a question? Yeah.
Hello. Okay. I have a few questions. So the area governance topic is like really broad, I want to say. There's like a lot, it covers like a lot of things. So I was like asking like, does these like OWASP AI controls like techniques, do they apply to like every AI like app? So for example, there's different kinds, right? You have like, if like would these rules apply to an app located like hosted locally? Or how would that differ to like an AI app hosted locally compared to one like for development? For example, like if you wanted to generate or make an app that was going to be commercial, like for example, Copilot or ChatGPT, how would that be different, or how would that be implemented different to like just a local like LLM that you host within your own network, and that's like not exposed to like a supply chain where it's just like you have a group of developers working on a local LLM app and then they just host it on the network. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
It's not for commercial use, it's for internal use, right?
So I think you kind of answered your own question. So think about the scale and think about the scenario, right? So the scenario, if you're gonna have it kind of like, siloed it, not connected to any supply chain, it's basically controlled. It's not, it's not as, from a scaling perspective, from a deployment perspective, it's not really having any inputs and touch points to a lot of different environments. Those security controls are definitely going to be less rigorous, right? Compared to an enterprise that has, regulatory pressure, scrutiny, sensitive data classification, data security posture management. So, so I think you answered your own question. So depending on the environment, depending on the situation, depending on what's actually happening, that's where you start looking at a policy, right? Governance is governance, right? You want to have a policy in place, have a policy in place. If you're just going to be doing an LLM, would you have any documentation that shows what that LLM is doing, why you have an LLM in place, what is it that we're doing here? That's still governance, that's still control, that's still an administrative control to show any technical work for that particular LLM. If you have something that's like a ChatGPT or a Copilot in the environment, they have an AI governance group that shows that all they do is just add those reviews, they do those approvals, they streamline the approvals to the the GRC kind of leads and GRC leaders in the organization that ultimately flows into the CISO. At most organizations that kind of sign off on the risk, that sort of thing. So basically, scale is the big difference there. Scale, environment, and then obviously applicability of governance-related standards, policies, procedures, what have you, to the actual specific tailoring of that situation, right? Whether it's a small LLM, that's not really doing, it's only selected by a select number of folks, very limited, kind of like blast radius is going to be limited compared to something that's all over the enterprise everywhere, and anybody can use it. So that can definitely dictate the amount of governance that's going to be needed for that sort of situation. But it's all based on scenario and scale, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, that answers the question. I don't know how much time we have for this section, Jeremy.
We still have time. We still have a few minutes.
Okay.
Jeremy's like, yeah, keep on going.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't want to take up too much time. So like this document, who is it like tailored for, or can you like give it to anyone who's thinking of developing or implementing like AI? So like, for example, would you give this document, the same document, to someone who's developing AI, to like someone who's just going to implement it? Like you mentioned, some of these new apps have like, they're starting to integrate AI into their like apps. And should we, like, as someone who's just a consumer and not actually developing anything, do we have to like be conscious of like all this, like all these like different points, like you mentioned the model and like IP leakage, and then you have the model poisoning, like all that. To who should be the most concerned about all that?
That's a great question. The devil's in the details, right? So just put yourself in the lens of legal is going to have their take on that, right? Compliance is going to have their take on that. The red team operations, first line teams are going to have their take on that. So this document here can be used by anyone, right? How they actually I guess interpreted is going to be very different. From an actioning perspective, I know Jeremy, he does a lot of work, but if compliance and GRC tells him it has to be adhering to this standard, he's going to have to find a way to the work that they're doing suffices and is compliant with that set standard here, like those controls that I just showed for every example. So it's used by the GRC teams to show what the standards are and the controls are, and it's used by the cybersecurity operators handling the model, dealing with the model, or securing the model, and understanding what they can do to help safeguard against those particular situations. So this document can be used by anyone. Like, obviously, it's all about the lens and the perspective and where you're at and the skin in the game, right? Where you're at in that process and what you're on the hook for. So I mean, and then from a customer perspective, I mean, this is really important, because if you have an SOW, a statement of work, or a contract, you want to make sure, kind of like a shared responsibility. Think SaaS, right? So think the shared responsibility model. Who's on the hook for what? Who's on the hook for the security of this data point or that data point? Or are they, what attestations are they giving you? Are they just throwing the SOC 2 report over the fence and be done with that, right? From an AI perspective, it doesn't really work that way, right? They really need to be detailed on how they're using AI, speaking about what they're doing to, that's going to impact your data. Like you said, like we talked about, IP leakage, data leakage, that sort of thing. So, from a customer perspective, I think it's even tenfold as far as the importance of how are you handling my data, right? How these models are training on my data, privacy, right? We talked about privacy. That's huge. The privacy impact assessment. Texas has a privacy law now. Texas has an AI governance law that just came into effect here at the beginning of last month or a month and a half ago, right? So all that is going to be fines and regulatory pressures on small, medium-sized companies that need to adhere to these, regulations on privacy, AI, governance. You name it, right? So. Yeah, this is for anyone and everyone. I mean, obviously, this was meant for cybersecurity red teamers, blue teamers, but at the same time, they got to understand governance, right? So when you have the most hacker person, like Hoodie, Mr. Robot looking person coming in to give a talk and talk about a risk register, you'll have a little teardrop go down your face, because I mean they need to understand the importance of that and how that's going to enable their work and enable them, one, to keep the job on, keep the lights on, and keep going. So this is for everyone. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. That answers my questions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Got another question. Hold on.
Yeah, Dirce, I could see how if you write, like, this document could really help if you're using local LLMs in your organization, like Llama, like how Damien mentioned, how you got like a small dev team and they're building an app around LLMs locally inside the organization. But how do you enforce these policies against a third party like Chat or Copilot? Because if it's an internal team,
correct,
I can tell my internal team, these are our policies. When you're developing the app, it needs to adhere to these policies. But if you're trying to put your organization data in a third party like ChatGPT, how do you get that company to work with you?
I mean, you have to kind of show the risk, right? I mean, not to sound Debbie Downer, but doom and gloom, right? And what can go wrong if they just kind of open it up with no checks, right? I mean, there's tools out there that show, if people are using ChatGPT, there's tools that's going to show what they're doing, what they're prompting, what they're sending to that on the company's radar in regards to using their company email addresses. So, I mean, you need a huge DOP kind of rollout, right? Like have a DOP check, have a DOP kind of sanity check. And if that's not in place and they just kind of, open it up to the world, they're going to be in a world of hurt, especially if they have sensitive information. If there's a healthcare organization, they're going to be looking at, fines from a, HIPAA perspective. If it's regulatory, if it's financial, they're going to be looking at the regulators coming down on them. So having those, having those hard gates, right, of data using a ChatGPT, and Claude or anything that they're using to the world, not having those controls and guardrails. You need guardrails for the data for the organization, right? So now it's kind of like different, right? Before everyone went to the cloud, now I see companies bringing everything in-house, having their own version of ChatGPT for their environment, for their people, for their organizations, and kind of keep it just condensed to them feeding in, obviously, from models from the internet, right, from that particular perspective. But at that time, they're sanitized, they're condensed, they're trained, they're, that particular risk of, intellectual property sensitive information cannot, will be taken care of. But if not, you run the risk of, something being trained on, and then somebody else outside of the walls of your organization be able to pick up on that information. That's a big problem. So doom and gloom, show them what could go wrong, and, not, show them that this can definitely have, huge ramifications from a privacy and security perspective.
Yeah, I second that. DLP becomes super important.
Oh yeah, huge.
Dealing with AI, and there's plenty of solutions, nowadays with running your own models and stuff like that. I can't talk about it here, but if anyone wants to chat about it on the side, I'm happy to talk about some of the things that you can do and I've seen done. Pretty cool.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Who was that asked that last question, Jeremy?
Oh, that was Matt.
Oh, hey,
Just
Matt. Good. Here for Matt. Good stuff.
Cool. No other questions. Thank you, Dirce.
Thank you.
As
Appreciate
always.
it, gentlemen. Appreciate it, team.
All right.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.